This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You don't need me to tell you, Real Talkers, that this is a big year. The Prime Minister will swear in, Mark Carney. It's still taking some time to get used to that one, Johnny. I don't know. Prime Minister Mark Carney, he'll swear in on Friday. We're talking to you on a Thursday. He'll name, what do you want to call it, an economic wartime cabinet. We're expecting like 20 or fewer cabinet ministers. And then, of course, we widely expect a federal election call, which could come as early as Monday. So there's that. There's this tariff war. There's this back and forth, this bickering, this fighting with our best friends, the United States, our longtime best friends anyway. And then, of course, if you're in our home province of Alberta, you know that this fall there's going to be a municipal election, and many folks are widely expecting significant alterations to how the councils in Alberta's two most populated cities look, in the capital, in Edmonton, and down in Calgary as well. Now, whether or not that plays out remains to be seen. That's why we have the campaigns, and we've got you covered right here on Real Talk. Coming up in this episode of the show, we've got an exclusive with Edmonton City Councillor, longtime Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton, who will be announcing publicly in front of most of the media her plans moving forward a couple of hours from now. But she'll be doing it right here first. And that's probably why so many of you are joining us on the live stream presented by California Closets. We want to welcome you. We're also going to be talking to James Jackson, who's doing unbelievable work in business development at the Edmonton International Airport. The entire team there in air service and business development has been working to secure this flight to London. Now, why is that such a big deal? What do airports say about a region's economy? We're going to get into that. I'm curious to understand more about it. I bet you are as well, Real Talkers. All of that coming up. First, I want to let you know that this episode of Real Talk is happening with the support of Alberta's top online real estate school. You'll find them at relo.ca. That's RELO.ca, where better real estate training starts. Now, what makes Relo such a big deal? Why are they Alberta's top online real estate school? Well, it's real estate learning online for the bold and ambitious. They're the only real estate school that sets you up with a professional practice network. Plus, they've got professional development webinars. They're going to make sure that from the very first step of your journey, that's getting set to be licensed and then getting certified, ready to practice, and ultimately, of course, hanging your sign and getting those customers, getting those partners, getting those folks walking in your door so you can help them buy or sell that perfect property. Relo has a team of experts that have been there. They've done it. They've got years of experience, and they're all about value. That's why they've added a ton of extras to every course they offer. You can learn more at relo.ca. If you're signing up for the Alberta residential or commercial real estate bundles, make sure you use the promo code Ryan100. That'll knock $100 off each of those. I'd love to put $200 back in your pocket, Real Talkers. Promo code Ryan100 at relo.ca. I love this from Jillian, who's watching us in the chat. She says, yo, folks, I really need that direct flight to London. Jillian, we're going to make it happen. That's coming up in just a little bit. But first, we welcome back to the show a good friend of the show, Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton. It's nice to see you.
Ryan,
you've got this look on your face for the podcast listeners. You know, you can hear, if you think when you listen to podcasts, you can hear when someone's smiling. Yeah. And we can hear you smiling right now because you've reached a decision. And if I know anything about you, this has been weeks or months in the making. What are you going to be doing in the fall?
Honestly, it's been years in the making. I think last time I was on the show, you asked if I was going to run again this fall. And I said I hadn't decided yet, but when I did, I'd come back. So I'm here today to say that I will not be seeking re-election.
Wow. Okay. How did you reach the decision? Why is this the decision?
You know, I've been on council for 2 terms, and it's been I was reflecting on, I think, the pivotal 8 years that it has been to lead this council through. However, I also was reflecting on something I feel really strongly about is to be a good leader, you kind of need to change it up. You need to get different experiences. So when I was reflecting on the things that we've accomplished or I've accomplished and the things that I wanted to do, I felt it was just time to step away.
Okay, that's a big one. Yeah, you've seen the city through a lot. There's been different manifestations. You've worked under different mayors.
Yep, very different mayors.
Yeah, very different mayors. How would you characterize so Stephen Mandel obviously was a big support to you. We weren't a councillor under Mandel, but you came in kind of with Don Iveson. There was this kind of youth movement on Edmonton's council, at least to a certain degree. And then, of course, Amarjeet Sohi coming from a federal cabinet position back to the city of Edmonton. So you've seen big change at City Hall.
Yeah, I think when I started on council, I was one of 2 women. It wasn't that long ago that we had only 1 woman on city council. So when I was elected, I was one of 2 women on city council. And I was also one of, I want to say, 4 people under the age of 40 on city council. Huh. And as we're here in the fall, talk about top 40 under 40, the good and bad part about being top 40 under 40 is suddenly everyone knows how old you are. And I'm still, I think, the second youngest person on city council, but I just turned 40. So you also, city council sort of has this regenerative quality to it. You get young people coming in and the experienced people moving up, and so I anticipate fully that we'll see some young people elected to council in the fall.
You think so? I know you'll see lots of young people running, but I'm also getting this sense that many members of the general public, and this is only my own orbit, my own circle, this is my own experience and what I'm hearing, but there's a lot of people that are feeling like Edmonton's council, that Calgary's council has kind of lost its way in a sense, that they've forgotten exactly how a city operates. They've forgotten what makes a city healthy economically and otherwise. They've failed to prioritize some of the big things like downtown safety and downtown development or downtown vibrancy and proper transit development. I mean, there's a lot of people that are all fired up right now about what's happening in those 2 cities in particular.
Absolutely. And so first of all, I think all over the Western Hemisphere, we're seeing really significant changes in governments, and the ones that are hanging on, and I look to say British Columbia, you're seeing really massive shifts in policy that often reflects, I think, an acknowledgement that people have, people's hearts and minds are in a different place than when we started even 6 years ago. We'll see what the electorate has to say in the fall. That's sort of well beyond my opinion on it, but I think when I look back at 2 terms, the first council was, I just talked about how I was young on that council. We had 4 new councillors at the time, but we were surrounded by people who'd served 1 or more terms. And so this culture of consensus building came really naturally. And I think a difference for this term has been a lot of people were learning all together at the same time. And if we're being honest, I think it slowed us down. And I think it's been really hard, to be fair, I think it's been hard to build consensus. And I would wager it's been hard to build consensus in Calgary as well, for that reason.
That feels like a pretty safe statement. Yeah, I mean, you've got Calgary's council has always kind of come across as I guess a little bit of a different makeup, and let's note that with Bill 20 and everything the province has been introducing political parties, Albertans will be seeing municipal political parties for the very first time this municipal election, and I think that's changing the dynamic. It's changing the game, even with the new people that are being drawn in, that are being attracted to the idea of being candidates, of putting their necks out there and seeking office. They've now got decisions to make. Will they run as an independent? Will they run as part of a team? Was there a part of you that just wanted nothing to do with that? How much did that factor in?
In 2019, when it was first rumored that parties were going to be introduced in 2019, and I, at that time, kind of had my back up. I was like, absolutely no way. I felt much like some of my colleagues that it was kind of an affront to the independence of municipal government. And then when Bill 20 was introduced last year, I was at an FCM meeting and I was talking to some of my Quebec colleagues, and they have been dealing with a party system for a long time. And I asked them, how do you deal with it? How do you manage the party politics? And they're like, we get through the election and then we work together. And so I think it's an experiment right now. I think a lot of people have reservations about it. But I also think it'll attract people who don't necessarily have a lot of political experience, but have other kinds of experience, and they can build up that campaign or they don't have to build a campaign from scratch. They'll get more support on it. And my hope would be, regardless of sort of how a party structure proceeds, is that once people get elected, they remember first and foremost that they serve the people who have elected them, and that you have to always operate with the best interest of Edmontonians at heart.
Are you walking away from politics, or are you walking away from municipal politics? Would you consider running provincially or federally?
I would. I mean, there's a rule in politics, you never say never. But I've lived in the public for the past 8 years, and I think you know how hard that can be. I got married in public. I had my child in public. I got about 5 days off between giving birth via C-section and going back to work.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so I've also never been a parent or a spouse outside of public life. And I'm looking forward to living a bit more private life. I don't think I'll stray far from politics. I'm still really passionate about it. I'm passionate about city building, but I want to lead in a different way and use what I've learned to maybe help mentor some of our up-and-coming civic leaders.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Dig into that a little bit. Lauren, by the way, in our Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, says thanks for your service. Councillor Hamilton, how about this from Ken, who throws $5 into the YouTube super chat? He's buying you a beer. You can take it out of the beer fridge on your way out. He says, as it is with most politicians, says super chat Ken, I don't see eye to eye with Sarah on many things, but I sure appreciate her service. Thank you, which is kind of interesting. Alberta Girl says councils don't run cities. They just take the blame. City managers and CAOs have too much power. Thoughts?
I mean, we could look to the US, where you have more of a strong mayor model, Ontario, where you have more of a strong mayor model. Someone said to me about federal politics that the best governments are minority governments. And I think city councils kind of function as minority governments. You have to build consensus. You always have to find your majority votes. And getting by in Edmonton, getting by on 7-6 votes is you get by on it, but it isn't a strong sort of endorsement. I think it's way more complicated when you get into the legislation. City managers do have a lot of power. School superintendents do have a lot of power. But it also includes powers under the Emergencies Act, so that they can respond really quickly without having to convene their councils. And remember, in Edmonton and Calgary, you have councils sitting full time. In a lot of municipalities, especially our rural municipalities, people are sitting, they're still working full time at their ordinary jobs, and they're meeting once or twice a month. So it could be a lot harder to convene councils when you need them for those emergencies.
You've taken a lot of crap for a lot of things, and not just in our political group chat. And Real Talkers are pretty familiar with our group chat. You've met them, Real Talkers, on these group chat roundtables, but they hold you accountable privately, and I've seen a lot of people hold you accountable publicly on the pace of construction, the construction plan, bridge closures, road closures, crime, lack of downtown vibrancy, the city's relationship with the province, and we will dig into that for sure. But you've been one of the more outspoken city councillors on key issues, including crime and housing and infrastructure. Are you stepping away because of a certain degree of dysfunction at City Hall?
I mean, I certainly think it could be more functional.
I certainly think it could be more functional. Okay.
And like I said, I think part of it is a function of just a lot of new leadership. I think it is really hard to learn in the public eye. So I'm not necessarily gonna lay that at people's feet. It isn't easy to take that kind of heat. I think you've been on the receiving end of some of that, although maybe not for public decisions. Something I learned though during the George Floyd protests, and I got a lot of feedback during that time. And something I learned was, as a leader, don't argue with people about their feelings. If someone comes to you and they say, I don't feel safe, I don't feel like you're listening, I don't feel they're sharing something about how they feel. And if we respond as leaders, I think one of the mistakes leaders writ large make is taking those feelings and trying to respond to those with facts. like you're trying to persuade people out of how they feel. And so I never try to internalize that kind of criticism. People feel comfortable sharing how they feel, including in my friend circle, our friend circle, I should say. And I think 75% of leadership is being there with people. Progressives call it, sitting with the discomfort. I don't think progressives are necessarily great at sitting with the discomfort. But if someone says they don't feel safe, you don't talk them out of it. If they're frustrated by construction, you be there with them. Say, it is frustrating. It is hard to watch. This is what I am doing to try and alleviate that concern. And I'll be here along the way with you, but I'm not going to spew a whole bunch of facts about how how many potholes we fixed, and we fixed a lot, but that's not going to help you feel better about your commute tomorrow.
City's finances, and we're talking about Edmonton proper now, but I think that the premise holds true across the province, but Edmonton's finances are a mess. Would you agree? I mean, taxes keep climbing. I think it's fair to say that many people are losing faith in leadership. Not all. We'll find out this fall who's lost faith or how many have lost faith in leadership. But did you wrestle with the decision in the sense that maybe based on your approach to budgeting and the stand that you've taken, that the city might need your voice on council now more than ever? Like, take us through that kind of wrestle match.
I mean, that's a really good question. One of the reasons I delayed my decision so long was, in fact, because of that. Because some really wise people I respect were saying to me, we're going to need you for the next budget. We're going to need creative thinking, creative decision making. We're going to need that type of leadership. I think I can still provide that kind of leadership and guidance, just in a different way. And I also see the trust issues that you're talking about. I see that people in this city might be ready for a change. And when you're talking about really significant trust issues like around property taxes and infrastructure, it can be helpful to have new faces at the table that approach the problems differently.
On our live chat, powered by Park Power, Jillian says, people need to understand, 1, all feelings are valid. 2, feelings aren't facts. And 3, feelings affect how you perceive facts. Mm-hmm. And she says all of those can be true. And I think that that's an insightful comment. Interesting here from Tara Lynn, who says she picks it up. She says, like, folks' frustration when it comes to kind of the pace of construction or what's happening downtown, she says it's absolutely palpable. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a great word. And I think that it's obvious to anybody who pays attention. Have you perceived or have you noticed a change in not just like public opinion, that's too vague, but in how in the public's appetite or willingness to endure some short-term pain for long-term pain, that long-term gain, that kind of idea? Like, have you noticed a change in how the public interacts with council, in the public's expectations of council, or how a city is built or grows?
I certainly have. Okay, so when I talk about the change we've seen over the past 8 years, like the pandemic, we saw really big changes in policing, but we also saw changes as a city through our city plan and our growth. We're growing really fast. And the last time we were growing this fast, I would say, was mid-2000s. Some folks might remember that, but probably 50% of the people who live in this city now came to Edmonton during that time or after. That's how fast we've grown. I think that we're making really big moves now. I don't know that, and one of the examples, I think we're going to hear a lot about it in the fall, is the ability to go up to 8 units on what used to be a single detached residential lot. And people have a lot of anxiety about that. And the change is happening really fast. I don't think an appropriate response to people's anxiety about that change, next to, by and large, the biggest asset or the biggest expenditure most people will ever make in their life. I don't think an appropriate response is to say change is tough. Change is hard, but our city is growing and we need to put them somewhere. I think I don't think we've quite nailed it yet. I think we could have done a better job, and council could have done a better job giving direction in terms of technical briefings, allaying some of the fears. We had a lot of fears about the 15-minute cities conspiracy. And I shouldn't call it conspiracy because there's people out there who believe it is part of a plan.
That doesn't make it not a conspiracy.
It doesn't.
though.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know that we've done a really good job of being with people in those hard moments. And I say, like, 8 years ago, when you made a decision, people didn't like it, you hear about it. We don't hear about it as much anymore. And I don't take that as people being okay with it.
That's not positive.
I think they're going around. I think we're waiting people out.
I think it's because a lot of people feel like their city councilor doesn't represent them anymore, and they feel like their perspective. And I think that a lot of people feel, and this is my opinion, and we get a lot of emails, we get a lot of comments, and I think a lot of people have felt that there's a certain arrogance or that their councils have been out of touch regarding what their priorities are. And we're going to see that. We see it every municipal election. The candidates we're seeing it with Tim Cartmel right now, your colleague who wants to unseat Amarjeet Sohi. Still waiting on word from Sohi, right? But what do you think, by the way? You think he's going to run again?
Well, I mean, yeah, I do. I think he's going to
run again. So that'll be an interesting showdown. A relatively prominent councillor running against an incumbent. But I think that you have a lot of people that just sort of feel like, I mean, you referenced the Edmonton police. I mean, there's a, correct me if I'm wrong, push back if you must, but like it feels like an antagonistic relationship between the police and council. I mean, there's councillors, including, in the core, that have very, I'm going to say, negative relationships with the Edmonton Police Service, and I don't see how this is a good thing for anybody.
I would agree with that. I think it's been really antagonistic. And to be fair to this council, I think it started before. I think it started in the sort of the aftermath of the George Floyd protests. And I think the tragedy in all of this has been that I think the strategic plan that the police had in 2020 and where both the last council and this council want to go are extremely closely aligned. But the tragedy for me is that we've spent 5 years getting to that point where we could even acknowledge it. And like, to me, that seems like such a waste of time and energy. So much of politics, as you know, you've been around a long time, and you interviewed a lot of people, but so much of it is about relationships. And I don't know that council calibrated that relationship well from the onset. I mean, we also remember we're sort of at the tail end of the pandemic, and then we had the convoy protests, and we were seeing what was happening in Ottawa. I think there was a lot of fear about what would happen here, and no one really deeply understood what the police could do, what council could do, what powers we had, what the province could do in terms of, never mind, like, let's not talk about stopping the protests. People have a right to protest, but to alleviate the pressure on both police and the communities that were impacted by it.
I think that dismantling those encampments was also, like, if I look at like kind of the big mile markers of the stories that involved both the municipal government, in this case the provincial government as well, and the Edmonton Police Service, that was a big one. What do you remember about that time? Because that was I mean, the eyes of the nation were on Edmonton when that was happening. Yeah, and
I'm trying to, I think that was late 2022, early 2023. I believe it was. I was going to my last year, or is it 2023 to 2024?
I'll get it for you in a second. Yeah.
But I was either rolling off the police commission or going into my last year on the police commission. I think that was kind of a bubbling up moment. The message that the police had been sharing and the province had been sharing was that something that's, I think, City Council now broadly acknowledges, that there is no such thing as a safe encampment. And having people living outside in the winter, in the deep freeze, is just not an appropriate way to fill the gap on shelter and housing. And I think that had been messaged for a number of years, certainly 2022 when Minister Shandro went through Chinatown after the Chinatown murders. And they weren't seeing for whatever reason, they weren't seeing urgency, I think, from council. And so I think that sort of represented a boiling over point, that they decided to use the powers they had to move people into the navigation center.
Yeah, it was fall 23 into early 2024 for reference. So you've got, obviously right now sort of you're in a position where, you review your career, your time on council, and then of course personally you'll be looking ahead. I want to ask you, what are a couple of the things that this council got dead wrong, that you'll even take some ownership for, or maybe you'll point out that you voted against something? And then what's a couple of things they got right? Why don't we start with what they got wrong? What's something that you think this council really blew it?
I think public safety. Because it's still haunting us. It's the number one issue in the city. I think from the onset of the conversation, we weren't really clear. I think as a police commissioner, I probably could have put a harder line down in terms of what we could actually do and help maybe have helped facilitate that conversation a little bit better. But I think we raised the expectations of the community in such a way that we couldn't deliver on some of the things that they were asking for, because it's not our legislated authority, and it created that antagonistic relationship, not just with the police, but with the police commission. And I think in order to recover that and get that relationship back to a functional state, you're going to need a hard reset. In terms of what I think they got right, I think that we approached this term with a very planning oriented lens. I think it's taken a lot of bravery to get through the zoning bylaw renewal. And this is really technical stuff, but it is the things that shape the city. I think, a more politically mature council maybe would have calibrated the rollout of that differently. But when it comes to the planning, like, those were big, bold moves that needed to happen.
The Edmonton City Hall shooting was obviously a remarkable occurrence for a number of reasons. Mm-hmm. Number one, I still can't believe that nobody was injured. Let alone killed.
Thank God.
Considering the way that it all went down and these mm-hmm. wild shots ringing out through City Hall and the fires that this individual was starting and the like. How did that, take us back to that time in your recollection? How did it impact you as a politician? It changed things at City Hall, in some cases still to this day.
Yeah. And I would, I don't want to sound too glib about it, but I'd been hoping that we would hit some stride of normalcy going into 2024. I felt like I can rattle off all these things that happened. 2022, we had convoy protests. We had the terrible murders in Chinatown. We were still in and out of COVID restrictions. We're in and out of all of these disruptive events. And then 2024 hit, and I was personally hoping that we would see just a little bit more normalcy. And that to me was the sign that this was just not going to be a normal term. This was the new normal. We're not going to get back to it. And I think it impacted everyone differently. Certainly a lot of us, I wasn't in City Hall that day. A lot of us felt terrible for our colleagues who were. And I think, I don't think I realized, or others, I think everyone's on this journey together. So, or it's differently, I should say. But I was still thinking about it 4 and 5 months later. And that to me was a sign that it maybe had a hold on me in such a way that I hadn't appreciated from the outset. I also, we're all helpers in this business. And so when something like that happens, you wanna go and give everyone a hug. And something I think I learned out of that was the difference between providing that like mental health first aid, just making sure people had the support they needed to be okay, and like running into the trauma with people. And so that, I had to recalibrate my response going forward to events like that, because I think in this business, you can carry a lot of other people's trauma or other people's burdens if you're not careful.
For sure.
Yeah.
Vamp Fashions in our live chat says, I'm not sure why we can't refer to that as a terror attack. It's 100% a terror attack. RCMP laid terrorism charges.
He was charged with terrorism.
The accused in this case, Bajani Sarvar, facing 11 charges, including 2 terrorism charges.
And we started, go back to 2017, we actually started this term with a terrorism attack as well. The person who drove a car into a police officer at Commonwealth Stadium,
right,
and then drove downtown. We forgot that as well. That happened in September 2017. So that is sort of an interesting way to bookend this term.
Yeah. I'll never forget that night. That was just a wild one. That police officer fighting for their life with this madman trying to take him down right outside Commonwealth Stadium.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for joining us and for sharing, kind of pouring out your heart to a certain degree and telling us about it. I just want to ask you in closing, the relationship, the perception is, Edmonton didn't do too poorly, as a matter of fact, in the most recent provincial budget. Better than I think some people expected. I know that some people have complaints. We talked to Scott Sinclair, the MLA out of Slave Lake. He's choked. Was a conservative MLA. He's choked that Edmonton's getting $100+ million to get rid of the Coliseum and the like. But I know that a lot of people do believe that there were some silver linings in that budget for the city of Edmonton. That traditionally, the narrative is that Edmonton's getting frozen out based on the way that it votes. But that relationship could be better, like you said, could be more functional. Are you concerned about this next council and its working relationship with Danielle Smith's UCP government?
Always. I think something that I always remember, my personal political opinions are one thing. When, as a city councillor, if I'm going online and sharing my opinion, or going on your radio show and sharing my opinion, I think the challenge is always that you don't just speak for yourself. You're speaking for the 95 or 100,000 people you represent, and as a governing member of city council. And so I've always been kind of cagey in the past about being overly critical, because NDP, Liberal, Conservative, UCP, whatever the government is, provincial or federal, you have to work with them and you have to build relationships. And I try and remember that those people are there, those folks run to serve their communities as well. So I like to think that we come to this from that same place of trying to do better by the people we represent. I think we live in a highly political time, and diplomacy is a dying art. And so if I had advice to the next council, is revive it and keep those relationships alive. Listen first. Come to things with good, well-intentioned. Assume that whether you're dealing with the provincial or federal government, they're coming to it well-intentioned as well, and work to deliver everything you can for the people that you represent.
Finally, will you be endorsing anyone either running to replace you in Ward Sipiwiniwak, or will you be endorsing anyone for mayor?
Oh, I've been thinking about that, and I haven't decided yet. I hold that really close. I want to see how, I'm a voter too. I want to see how people campaign, how they talk about the work that has been done and the work that needs doing. And maybe I'll make a decision closer in the fall, but I also don't, I think in the last election, we saw a lot of endorsements, and I don't know that always works out. As a leader, you're tying your name to someone. So I want to see what people have to deliver for Edmontonians before I put my name behind them.
There's a longtime council veteran that lives in your riding that I would love to see run again. You think he'd do it? Well, let's see if we're on the same page. Who am I talking about?
I think you're talking about former mayor.
I am.
Yeah. I'm
talking about Stephen Mandel.
Yeah, you're talking about Stephen Mandel. I think last time I was here, I also said I think he's I love him.
He's one of my favorite people.
He's one of my favorite people. He I think he's the best mayor the city has ever had. And I tested that. My assistant Graham's here. Graham also thinks that. I'm not putting words in his mouth. He told me that of his own free will yesterday as well. Part of me, I would love to see him come back, but I also think he's been such a great mentor to me. He has such a unique perspective. I'd also love to see him become or really become that elder statesman of our city and help us remember who we are. I think that's something that he's really good at.
You're getting a little bit emotional.
Always.
What is it about that?
I don't know. Just something I love about this city. It's a spirit of community that we come with. And I think for a lot of people that how they define their place in the city, it came during that time. It kind of, that is an era for a lot of people that, especially if you're in your, I would say your 30s or 40s, that is an era that defined not only the prosperity of this city, but the possibility of this city. And I think one of my fears for this city is that we'll lose sight of that. We are a big city. And I think that sometimes, we've talked about a lot of issues today. I think sometimes we get bogged down in the things we don't get right, and we forget so much of the things we do.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. I don't take that for granted. Nobody's ever been able to accuse you of not caring. And that's obvious. You see all the love here, right? You can see all the hearts and the emojis in the live chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people are, it's kind of funny. You get a lot of underhanded compliments as a politician. A lot of people are saying, I didn't really agree with her, but I want to thank her for her service. And then, of course, you'll hear from a lot of people that really appreciate the positions and the stances you took. You've not been my counselor, but I respect anybody that puts it out there in public service. And I don't think people understand the draws and the pulls on your time. And your priorities, and as a mom and as a wife and as a friend and all the other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a hell of a run, and we look forward to seeing what you do next. Thanks for telling us first here on Real Talk. We appreciate it, Counselor. Yeah.
Anytime.
It's one of the last times I'm going to be calling you that, by the way.
Yeah.
Back to Sarah.
Yeah.
All right. That's Edmonton City Councilor Sarah Hamilton. You heard it here first on Real Talk. She will not be seeking re-election. Thanks for this, Sarah. We appreciate it. We'll see you again on a group chat roundtable right here on Real Talk. This show is happening with the support of our friends at Friesen Brothers, and there's a couple of things that I want to put on your radar. But before I do, I wanted to note something that I saw in the live chat yesterday. And Krista, I didn't have a chance to mention it. Krista was watching us live on Facebook, and she let me know that she had just ordered and picked up her Friesen Brothers freezer pack, and she was so excited with it. These are those custom freezer packs that you can get into. Of course, you tell their butchers exactly what you're looking for, and they custom cut that meat wrapped and ready to go into your freezer. Friesen Brothers has a 20% off meat sale coming up March 17th only. That's only on St. Patrick's Day. You can learn more details at friesen.com. Don't forget Pie Day as well coming up on the 14th. This is going to be a big one, obviously. They've got these amazing, they're called cutie pies, and they're going to be $3.14. That's coming up on Friday, the 14th of March. You can find all the details on their website. Our friends at California Closets reminding you that they are proudly Canadian owned and operated, and always have been. As a matter of fact, right here in Alberta, they're employing folks, and of course they've got Calgary and Edmonton showrooms. They're doing work across the province right now. All of their manufacturing is happening in Alberta, and they're sourcing their materials from Canadian suppliers. You can make the most of your space with a custom organizational system from California Closets. That's custom closet systems and solutions for the entire home. You can request a free consultation today by visiting californiaclosets.ca. If you're working right now in a job where, quite frankly, you just don't see room for advancement, you're kind of going through the motions. You're putting in the time, but you're just looking elsewhere. There's got to be something better out there. The team at Kubi Renewable Energy, Western Canada's fastest growing solar installer, is hiring right now for positions in Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and Kamloops, BC. If you've got your ticket, if you're an apprentice, if you've worked in sales, if you're an engineer, they want to talk to you. You can check out the careers link at kubi.ca. Learn more about the opportunities that lie in wait. They are always updating that careers link, so you know that those job postings that are there, if they're posted, they're open, including Calgary. They're looking for a new electrical engineer and a solar PV expert, solar PV designer as well in Edmonton. There's a long list of available jobs right now at kubi.ca. And our friends at North Road Investment Council know that everybody's watching the markets right now. Everybody's looking at their investments. Everybody's looking right now at where they're sitting with their nest egg based on some of these international factors. Yeah, we're talking about Donald Trump. For high net worth individuals, financial management is not about guesswork. It can't be. It's about strategy. And that's where North Road Investment Council comes in. Their team creates customized investment plans to help you achieve your unique goals with confidence. North Road Investment Council is a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. We invite you to connect with Marshall and Carrie today at northroadic.com. How cool is it to have James Jackson joining us in studio? James is the Vice President for Air Service and Business Development at Edmonton International Airport. And as far as I can remember, this is your Real Talk debut.
That's correct. I'd be lying if I said I've never been in the building before, but never been on air with you.
Well, you've always been such a great friend to the show, and it's been awesome to see the work that you and the team that EIA has been doing and just leveling up air service into and out of the city of Edmonton. This audience knows that we've been talking about how YEG Wants London all week, and this is a big campaign that you and your team have been rolling out. Why is London, England such a big deal? You don't oftentimes see airports putting a big campaign, a big ambitious campaign out to the public saying, help us land this flight.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, to be honest, but it's an incredibly important market to us. So London is one of our top unserved markets for Edmonton, and we rank in the most top unserved markets across all of North America for London specifically. So the community has been very clear with us on social as well as in person that destination is incredibly important. And so we're trying to rally the community with us to facilitate a business case and a public awareness campaign that will help us hopefully secure the flight.
This is really competitive, right? Like, can you give us some insight into how these airports and airport authorities operate and how different cities that typically you might see as cooperative might actually be going head to head against each other to land these big flights?
Yeah, so the air service industry and aviation industry is incredibly complex, and so an airport trying to secure a point-to-point route is only one of many variables that make these things happen. And obviously we need to work incredibly closely with airlines and the communities to make it happen. But when I say this is a competitive industry, like, we're not just competing with other domestic jurisdictions, Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto. Like, these are mobile $100 to $200 million assets that can be anywhere in the world in 12 hours. So not only are we competing with other jurisdictions in Canada, we're competing with other jurisdictions all over the world. And so it really differentiates a community when you can say, hey, we have a great business case and the economics and financials work out, but we also have tens of thousands of people that have put their name behind supporting your product as a business, as an airline.
But nothing's guaranteed either, right? Like, if you, like, a city can land an international destination, whatever that might be. It could be Reykjavik, could be Frankfurt, could be London, could be Sydney, Australia, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then they could have it for like 3 or 6 months and then lose it.
Yeah, and we've experienced that as a city, as Edmonton. And, you know, I'll be honest, we've had London before. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to move on with that service. And so right now, Edmonton is only 97% recovered in terms of air service and passengers from the pandemic. And so there are a few variables. One is passenger volume, like total passengers traveling. And another is the points, the connections and destinations that people can fly to. So it is incredibly important that not only do we recover, but we exceed and continue to grow, because Edmonton's growing, right? The population's booming. There's $96 billion in capital projects in the pipeline. Just in terms of private sector, we've seen population growth of 4 to 5% over the last few years. Like, it is booming. And so we need to facilitate that economic catalyst that is air service to enable all that growth.
The Houston story is kind of an interesting one. I saw a headline on that. The EIA is getting it back, right?
Yep.
Houston service, but that was another destination that had disappeared for a while.
Yeah, that
How
was
much work goes into getting something like that, destination like that back?
An incredible and arduous amount of work, to be honest.
Really?
These aren't easy business cases to put together. And to give you an example, like, the community and the data showed us that Houston was an absolute home run, that it made more sense than any other route. Airlines agreed, we agreed, everybody agreed, and yet it still couldn't happen. And because there are a number of constraints within the aviation ecosystem that are at play, the availability of aircraft, you've seen the stories around the supply chain issues within the aircraft manufacturing with Boeing and Airbus and Pratt & Whitney and others with engines. And so that compounds. And so you can have a really viable route, but if the airline doesn't have the capacity, they don't have the metal to allocate it, it's not going to happen overnight. And so we heard loud and clear from the community that Houston was imperative to economic growth, especially from the energy sector. And so they stepped up. They provided us with their data, not only of who's currently flying, and this is the big thing with YEGWantsLondon.com, but who will get off the couch, so to speak, and start flying that currently wasn't. And that's what got us across the line with Houston. And so United is obviously a fantastic partner. We can't thank them enough, as well as Air Canada, because they're a partner on that route as well, in terms of their partnership with United. And so that's a great example of how the community came together to make something like this happen.
I feel like every single story that we talk about, every single interview that we do right now has a Donald Trump angle to it. And I'm just watching what's happening around me, and I'm seeing a lot of people, elbows up this whole campaign. People are saying we're either boycotting travel to the United States or we're canceling travel plans to go to the United States. Could that have, how are you wrapping your mind around it? Because, like, number one, I know you're a proud Canadian. Number two, I also am hearing you say that if you don't use these flights, you can lose these flights. So how's EIA kind of approaching all of this right now? Hoping it resolves quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, it would be great if Trump just picked up the phone and said, I'm sorry, and everything went back to normal. But I think we all appreciate that's probably not going to happen, at least in the short term. And so there is an impact to air service for sure. We've seen some of the airlines provide forward guidance, the publicly traded ones, saying that the next quarter or two are going to be a little rough, which I can appreciate. We've also seen what we call pace starting to decline. So pace is an indicator of forward bookings, and that is declining slightly. And I think having experienced something similar in COVID, the amount of uncertainty shrinks booking windows. And that translates to uncertainty with airlines, airports, and the entire ecosystem. So when people are unsure if they're going to travel or have decided that they're not going to travel, that has a compounding effect. The good news is for Edmonton, our exposure to the U.S. transborder is only about 13% of our total volume. Okay. 80% domestic, 7% international. And so we have a lower risk tolerance, a lower risk threshold when it comes to this issue. That being said, we're trying to grow and grow as a community. And Edmonton wants to be a global city. We have to be connected to the globe. We have to be connected to the largest economy in the world, regardless of the short-term challenges that we're experiencing with the government. And so what we're really trying to facilitate is long-term strategic focus on creating economic value for the community. Geopolitical dynamics will ebb and flow. This is the issue of the day. There might be an issue tomorrow or next term, but our focus is on connecting Edmonton business and families with the rest of the world, and we're committed to that. It's all about igniting economic prosperity for Edmonton and the entire region, and so we have to look beyond these geopolitical challenges and build business cases and build resilience within our economy and within our value proposition to airlines.
If you're just joining us on the Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to James Jackson, VP at Edmonton International Airport on our live chat powered by Park Power. We've got, I mean, this is, everyone's kind of got their take on this, which is great. Chelsea the Ginge, which is one of the better handles that I've seen this morning. She says, you know, people want London in particular, not just as a destination, but also as a hub. A lot of people are going to roll through London to other international destinations, of course. But it also, to me, it feels like, and I'm just a traveler, okay? I don't know anything. I don't sit around your boardroom table. I don't know the strategy. But it feels kind of like a crown jewel. Like, it feels like if your airport doesn't have London, it's a bit of a bummer. And it feels like if you do have London, a direct flight, then you're up there with the other airports. Is that a thing?
Yeah. Without going too much into the data, we would be the largest jurisdiction without service to London in North America. So you're
not a distinction you want.
Correct. And so, yes, it's a crown jewel, you know, it's a global hub. The challenge with London specifically is related to network alliances. It can be a hard connection depending on who you're flying with. So just because the data says that about 50,000 people fly from Edmonton to London every year and beyond to other jurisdictions in the world, and so that reinforces the point that it's a key connecting hub, that amount of people traveling back and forth doesn't, again, necessitate that there is a economic proposition to have that route. We have to go above and beyond that to convey to the airlines that they will have the connectivity. They'll have what we call feed from Canada and beyond traffic beyond the UK to make that economically viable. So you're 100% right. London is critical, and it's a global financial hub. It's a great tourism destination. It's a must.
Jill here is speaking in our live chat on behalf of folks who have family over in Europe, and she says, could everyone please, and I'll show it again on my screen here. This is just YEG Wants London.com. It's nice and simple. It takes literally 15 seconds, Real Talkers. You go and sign your name to the petition. But she says, on behalf of all of us who are having to fly, who would love to fly nonstop direct to go visit our families, please take 15 seconds and sign the petition. We'll put the link in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube as well. There's a couple of folks here. This is maybe an uncomfortable question, but it's a real one. Some in the live chat that are saying airlines want Calgary to be the hub, not Edmonton. Can we talk about those two airports? It seems like Calgary kind of boasts that it has more nonstop direct flights than Edmonton. What's the challenge there? Is that the accurate truth? Like, give us some insight into that.
So I'll back up a little bit. So the aviation business is extraordinarily competitive. The total amount of money that has ever been made in airlines is less than the total amount of money that has been lost in the aviation and airline business.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's net negative?
Over the entire history of aviation.
Since the Wright brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So like we're talking about very, very macro numbers here.
That's interesting.
So, but it is incredibly competitive. It is the most value accretive business, though, I would propose sort of in the last 100 years, because think about what it has enabled. Because of that complexity to facilitate air service, and because of the competition, airlines have to be extremely efficient with their network strategy. And that means operating with hubs. Air Canada, for example, has 3 hubs in Canada, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. WestJet is hubbed in Calgary. That is an operational decision that is like necessitated by the complexity of the business that they're in. Totally understand that and value that. So when people say airlines don't want to hub or fly to Edmonton, I wouldn't disagree, but I would explain the complexity. And so WestJet is a phenomenal partner. We're the second largest hub for WestJet. They comprise over 50% of our total market share. They're an amazing partner. They invested a significant increase into our air service last year that got us Chicago, Salt Lake City. They're flying to Atlanta, Minneapolis, and others. And so it's not that they don't want to and they don't like Edmonton or any airline for that matter, but we all have to appreciate the operational complexities of this, and the best way to help is to fly. So fly, don't drive, fly direct if you can, and if you have the means, fly business. Like that's the line. So whatever people can do to help drive air service, it really helps the entire economy, because I always say air service is the spark to the economic development flame. Like things happen when we have direct air service, and it is critically important that people continue to fly. And so I know there's some anti-US sentiment and we might not have all the directs, but you can still get to London today from Edmonton through one of our great partners with one connection. That's no problem. We encourage people to do it. Keep flying. Like that's the first message. Just keep flying, because when we don't fly, the network atrophies and we take a significant step back in terms of our economic viability and connectivity as a region.
But you're 100% right. Like I have to imagine that when like big corporations, or it could even be startups for that matter, but like when organizations are looking at where they're going to establish their head office or where they might move their head office, like you can't underestimate, I don't think, or maybe overestimate, I should say, the impact of having fulsome air service. Like when you talk about Houston, for example, I'm thinking like Alberta airports in Alberta in particular, in Edmonton, absolutely have to have direct flights to Houston just based on the energy industry. Like that's sort of what, I mean, I'm probably not thinking about 10 other reasons why people might fly to Houston, but to me, it's just like from the business case, what it signifies, what it makes possible, what it opens up is like a realm of possibilities that extends way beyond the real estate that the airport occupies.
Correct. So our airport facilitates $5.2 billion in economic activity, 23,500 jobs.
23,500?
That it supports. There's
Wow.
5,000 people that just work at the airport YEG campus, and then it supports 23,500 jobs. So think about the couriers that their warehouse might be off campus, but they're coming to the airport to pick stuff up. Caterers coming back and forth.
Yeah.
All sorts of folks. So going back to your Houston example, I was told to my face from a very senior energy executive that they currently don't come because they have to spend so much time traveling.
Sure.
And if we had that service, that they would increase their travel spend for their entire team by $1 million a year to that airline. Like that value is immense. And then they're spending more time in Edmonton. They can make more informed decisions about investments. We saw the same thing in 2018 when Air Canada stepped up to fly to San Francisco. The tech sector started flourishing between the two destinations. Capital started to flow. We started to suddenly see funds pop up in Edmonton and partnerships in the Bay Area. These things are catalysts to economic development, and they're absolutely critical, because when Dow is spending the better part of $10 billion in the heartland on a massive project, the engineers, the project managers, all the business folks that are flying back and forth to support that need to be efficient, because these are large entities with significant investment. So the more that we can connect Edmonton to the world, the better it is for everybody. And at the end of the day, our mission at Edmonton International Airport is to ignite prosperity and economic prosperity for the region, and our vision is to have more flights to more places. And so if we can do those two things combined, everybody should benefit.
People are starting in our live chat to submit their requests of where they'd like direct flights.
Yeah, list of grievances as well. Bring it on.
No,
Yeah.
There's not really grievances. A lot of people are Milan, Rome. People are, but Kenzie makes a point, says the airline industry is the canary in the coal mine for the direction of the economy. When airlines begin to slow and fail, the rest of the economy follows. And you could probably say the same in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, the order book for new planes is thousands of units long. So like, the global aviation industry is growing. More people are traveling than ever. On a pound for pound basis, the travel cost in Canada has decreased over the last, I'll call it generation or decade. So the growth is there, the investment is there from airlines to increase the order book, and I should say that will really help our value proposition in the future, because there's newer, more efficient aircraft that'll be deployed that we can take advantage of and hopefully partner with an airline to get us London.
Before we go, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit with this question, but just in the sense of like cool, exciting things that are happening, how the industry is changing, an area where EIA is leading the way. What's a storyline in your role, like your capacity as VP of Air Service and Business Development? How is travel, or how is EIA's offerings changing or evolving in a way that's getting you excited?
I think we're really focused on the passenger. The last few years, if you've flown through our building or traveled through our building, you've probably experienced a few construction projects of various shapes and sizes. And the objective with that is to really facilitate a better visitor experience. We're trying to put human connection and hospitality at the center of what we're doing. And so we're really focused on that aspect. I would also say that we're a leader in the country in terms of innovation. You might have seen we've initiated phase 2 of a drone project that's actually facilitating last mile cargo delivery by drones in a regulated airspace. That is the first time that's happened in Canada for sure. We believe in North America, and we're pretty sure in the world that an autonomous drone is flying with some cargo through a glide slope of a runway, basically. So the level of sophistication and the vision that my colleagues have at YEG is phenomenal. And so you can envision all of the economic development spin-off that'll come from last mile drone delivery, but also the regulatory collaboration that we're experiencing with the feds and with the province and with municipalities is phenomenal. And I could go on about all sorts of stuff, but it's a very, very innovative place. And I can say, as being relatively new to the organization, only being there a year and coming from the tourism industry, this airport is very unique in the world, just in terms of how it's thinking. And I think it's a great metaphor for how Edmonton is, right? It's an entrepreneurial community. It's a bunch of grinders. We're out there making our own businesses and our own prosperity. This airport is the exact same, and we really want to continue to work with the community on doing whatever it is they're interested in doing.
I love that. And by the way, I could listen to somebody talk about the future of drones for hours. Like, that stuff blows my mind.
Yeah, and
freaks me out a little bit on some of the stuff. Not so much on package delivery, but the other stuff. But drones are like, what a game changer. Yeah.
You can imagine in the future, if in the energy sector, they some critical component, breaks.
Yeah.
We fly a piece in and then rip it up north in a long haul drone, and suddenly, the innovation and economic stimulus that'll come from it, it's really exciting.
A buddy of mine's in the pallet business, and he does it. They have a wonderful partnership with Amazon right near the airport there, and he goes, buddy, the stuff that happens there and the volume would just blow your mind. Yeah, unbelievable stuff. Yeah. Well, congratulations. I mean, I would say this, and I said this to you before the show, before we sat down, like, your team is doing an unbelievable job, I think, rallying folks, because the airport represents, for a lot of people, it's a big part of their city's identity and a big part of how they feel about their city. And so this is where we put the call out to you, Real Talkers, and not just you, like, text your friends, text your family, get them to do this as well. It's very simple, YEGWantsLondon.com. You can also link to it from the Edmonton International Airport's website. It's right there on the main page. We'll put it in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. Show that you would support. You're not signing up. You're not putting a down payment down. You're not buying tickets. Just show you would support a nonstop flight from Edmonton to London. You can join the movement now, and they're hoping to have, this thing goes until March 17th. Do it today. Like I said, takes 15 seconds, your name, your email, and would you use a nonstop flight to London at some point? The answer is yes, obviously. I'm looking forward to the good news that we can share when this is secured. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us.
No problem. Hopefully we have tens of thousands of Edmontonians that are looking to support this flight. So if there's anything that you need or want as a community member as it relates to air service, reach out to us. We want this to be a bridge to the community, so leverage it. If you've got something to say, we're ready to listen.
Is this a bit of a unique, like, I haven't seen a lot of public campaigns of airports like reaching, what do you say, airport authorities? How do you refer airport authorities? Yeah. Like reaching out to the public to help them as part of a campaign. Is this kind of somewhat of a unique strategy?
I would say extremely unique.
Extremely unique. I love that.
We're being bold. We have to be bold. The community asked us to be bold, so we're being bold.
Bold moves.
There we go.
I love it. YEGWantsLondon.com. We've been hanging with James Jackson, VP for Air Service and Business Development at Edmonton International Airport. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
You got it, James. This conversation happens with the support of wonderful friends of ours like the team at Park Power. And right now, I know this is the time of year for a lot of people in particular. I'm showing you parkpower.ca right now where you can learn more about their electricity, natural gas, and internet offerings. But some of you may have been getting your utility bills over that past cold snap right now, and you're going, oh my gosh. I was talking about this with Johnny just the other day. I know I was talking to a friend that said their utility bill, it felt like it had quadrupled through that cold weather. Wow. This is a pretty neat opportunity right now. Park Power is offering a rate that is 40% below this. You know that you're hearing about this rate of last resort. You're hearing about that a lot. Well, Park Power is offering electricity, natural gas, and internet across the province of Alberta with the lowest rates, with awesome service, and they share their profits with Alberta charities. And because you're hearing about this on Real Talk, a special opportunity for you. This is exclusively for Real Talkers. You go to parkpower.ca/Real Talk, and you can learn a little bit more about the opportunities there. Park Power, a proud sponsor of this show. When you're signing up for electricity only with Park Power, you can use the promo code REALTALK50 to knock $50 off your first electricity bill. When you're bundling services, electricity, natural gas, and internet, the promo code REALTALK will knock $50 off each of those off your first bill. That could be up to $150 in savings. Plus, you're getting a great rate. You can learn more. We'll link to it in the show notes. parkpower.ca/Real Talk. How cool to see our friends from Complete Care Restoration right here in our building in Mercer Warehouse just the other day. They're going to be doing some work for one of our neighbors, and the neighbor is hiring them because of the craftsmanship they saw in our studio. I love that. There's nothing more powerful than a personal testimonial, and we're proud to be partners with Complete Care Restoration. They built this beautiful studio for us, and their attention to detail second to none. The majority of the work they do is restoring properties that have been impacted by fire, flood, sewer backup, pipes bursting. You get the idea. Black mold, asbestos. We could go on. If you're like me, your stomach clenches a little bit when you hear this stuff, because if you've been through it, you know. Peace of mind. Oh my gosh, it can be tough to achieve. Well, they're rebuilding peace of mind while they restore properties. They've been doing it for more than 25 years. If disaster strikes, remember the name Complete Care Restoration. And a big shout out to our friends at UCAN Youth Services. This is a partnership that we are so very proud of here at Real Talk. This nonprofit charitable organization based out of Edmonton, a really unique model across the country in how they're helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can learn more about how they do it, their values, their team, the partnerships that they have with employers across the Metro Edmonton region. They've got these programs, these ready for work programs that allow young people aged 18 to 24 to get themselves in a position for unique employment opportunities, entry-level employment opportunities. Now, what's in it for you as an employer? Well, you're getting young people that have been through this program. In particular, I'm talking about the Verto project, and they've also got a great Road to Work program as well. The Road to Work program specifically for young people looking for careers in the construction, road building, and traffic safety industries. They are literally transforming lives by creating these opportunities. Learn more about partnership opportunities today. Maybe solve some of your employment crunch issues. And of course, if you're looking to make a donation to an organization that we're really passionate about helping, you can do so today as well by visiting ucan.ca. Feeling, Johnny, like it might be a wise move for you and I to take a look at London. Maybe we do a series of shows in London, England, once we line up this direct flight. What do you think about that? I love that idea.
London's an amazing city.
Such a cool city.
And not just that. I mean, when you go to Europe, that's where you take the flight, right? You go to London and then you connect. You take the Eurorail or whatever, or you take a flight to another existing country. So that's just we need this. We need to connect YEG with London.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to recognize we saw this in the chat. Councillor Sarah Hamilton joining us. We appreciate the exclusive and letting us know what her plan is moving forward. So there's an open council seat in Ward Sipiwiniwak, which will be interesting to watch. It's an interesting ward with an interesting dynamic, kind of west central Edmonton, for those of you that are curious. Some pretty affluent neighborhoods in there, but it's not a rich riding, so to speak. I mean, there's obviously an interesting demographic there, kind of a balanced demographic, but we'll see who steps up to run in that riding. It's wide open right now. The councillor getting a little bit emotional at the end, and it was really cool. I love seeing this in the chat. I want to give a shout out to those of you that are watching us live right now that kind of had her back, that are like, this is fantastic. This is great to see somebody with so much passion, and sort of showing it like a heart on the sleeve type approach. But you could tell it almost seemed like it kind of hit her in a way as she was talking to us that this is all now real. Right? She's leaving the Real Talk studio. She's going to be speaking to members of the media today, I think 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that, after she talks to us. But I think when you're getting set to make that announcement about a big change in your professional career, especially I think when it's been a public-facing career and maybe a big part of your identity, that'll be tough to see. You see it with professional athletes when they're getting ready to hang it up as well, you know? I
think it was a candid moment, too. I like when it happens live because maybe she's been mulling over this, and as you go over things over time, you think, you're stonewalled now, you're immune to it. But then when you're on the spot and you're talking about all these things and you're realizing, like when you said, hey, this is the last time I'm going to see you and call you Councillor Sarah Hamilton, right? And it kind of hits you. I think anyone in public service, and especially Sarah, like she's not very old, right? She could have kept going for a while, so this was obviously a tough decision. But when you make a decision like this, I don't think anyone who dedicates their life to public service feels 100% like it's the right decision. There's always that thing in the back of their mind, like I could have done more for my community. And that's what welled up in her here.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I wanted to touch on something as well. We've got, you remember I read this email about from Matt Thorwell. This was the fellow that works as a liquor importer, Matt Thorwell, and he had written into the show. This was a few days ago, and we shared it with you. This is all part of the ongoing story of kind of this elbows up campaign across the country. It's like unofficially / officially known as this. I've seen entrepreneurs. My Instagram feed is just chock full of people selling T-shirts, elbows up T-shirts right now, and I think we credit Mike Myers, the great Canadian comedian who is on the Shane Gillis episode of Saturday Night Live. Mike Myers nailing his role as Elon Musk for SNL, but he at the end of the episode was wearing his Canada is not for sale shirt, and he was going elbows up to the camera. So everybody's kind of doing this now, and a big part of what Canada is doing. Now, there's obviously reciprocal tariffs, these tariffs to the tune right now, off the top of my head, approximately $30 billion worth. But Canada is saying we could double down, we could ramp up those tariffs if the United States is doing the same thing. Trump says they're going to be doing the same thing. Everybody's going, how does this all end?
It doesn't.
A wonderful conversation with Max Fawcett in our most recent episode. So if you didn't catch that, that's the March 12th episode. We asked Max, how bad could this get? And he gives us his prognosis. I encourage you to check it out. But the most prominent ones, I think, are in Ontario and Manitoba, and quite frankly, across the country, driven by the provincial government authorities. I'm talking the LCBO, the AGLC, and the like. They're pulling American booze off the shelves, and in some jurisdictions like Ontario, it's seen as like Ontario owns the booze, like the LCBO owns it. And so this isn't that big of a deal. It's a bit of a different model. And I'm grateful to Matt and to the others that have shared with us and helped us understand how it's different in Alberta, how the booze is not owned by the AGLC. It's owned, it's been bought and paid for by the importers that are bringing it in, and they're now being denied access to that. And we've shared, I've shared my opinion. You told us your gut instinct. Real Talkers have told us how they feel about that. The position on some of you has been, we understand that, these importers, including Matt's group, have been looking at, quite frankly, suing the government, suing the Alberta government for access to this liquor. They're saying, they say that the investment on their part is significant, and they're bleeding money on this. And we kind of broadened that conversation. It's stretched over the past couple of days on the show with Max yesterday. And Max kind of, seeing a room where maybe Alberta, the government, the AGLC, is in a position potentially to ensure that these businesses that are impacted by this policy aren't getting completely screwed over. You'd hate to see something like this force a Canadian company into a position of financial peril because of a stand that we're taking against the United States. You don't want to kind of, cut off your nose to spite your face type idea, right? So anyway, Matt was listening and he followed up. And one of the big things, a priority we have on this show is that if somebody writes in, we present their opinion and then we share our opinion and maybe don't do it with full information, or there's a follow-up. We always want to follow up. We always want to ensure that that person feels like their perspective has been properly shared and that the audience is in the know. So he says, hey, listen, I wanted to say thanks. He said, I was listening to today's podcast. He was listening to the March 12th episode. He says, just a couple of additional things. He said, I think that the audience would be interested to hear. He says, the majority of the players in our industry, so this is liquor imports, it could be bourbon, could be wine, could be whatever. He says, we do agree with the Team Canada approach, right? They're not trying to be outliers. They're not trying to sort of be like, Alberta not playing with the rest of the country type thing. He says, I agree with the Team Canada approach. He says, I think that the unified approach will send the message and we'll do our part to buckle down and make that happen. But Matt says what's important for your audience to recognize is that the issue here is that the Alberta AGLC, Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission, he says is breaking the law by seizing private property. He says we would have no issue with them stopping all future imports until the tariff issue is settled, but we're demanding that they release the goods for sale that have been imported and already paid for. Matt says, I live in BC. My business partner lives in Calgary. We employ more than 20 people across Western Canada, 10 of them in Alberta. Many property laws are being broken here. And he says, and I'm sure the government's got to be aware of this. He says, our legal demand letter went in this morning. This is just a few hours ago. Real Talkers, you're hearing about it first. He says, industry-wide letter is going out shortly. And our goal is to highlight the absolutely unnecessary collateral damage that's being done here. He says there are ways to shut U.S. imports down without seizing privately owned assets. And he says, yes, of course, we have provided the AGLC with the option of purchasing all of the goods on hold. He says, but to give you an idea of how much we're talking about, he says that equates to like 60, get this, Johnny, 60 to $80 million in inventory industry-wide. He says this is a huge deal for a lot of businesses, and I want to thank Real Talk for giving this the attention that we need. So you're talking 60 to $80 million. Pretty unbelievable stuff. Krista watching us on Facebook says they should absolutely do that. Ytrium meantime says the AGLC should own and operate all liquor stores in the province. I don't know about that. I kind of like that. That Alberta has the privately owned model. Just for me, based on choice, not every store is the same. If you've been in Ontario, if you ever lived in Ontario, I was there for 4 months once. If you've ever been in BC, it's if you're used to Alberta and the offerings that you have, every neighborhood, some neighborhoods have a store that's open until 2 a.m. Some neighborhoods have a store that's like a fine wine store. Some neighborhoods have stores that focus heavy on offering, tequila, mezcal, bourbon, and scotch, whatever it is. I'm clearly, obviously talking about the places I go, but you don't have that in other jurisdictions. That's not how it is in Ontario. That's not how it is in BC. So I think personally that the Alberta model serves consumers way better. But in a situation like this, people are getting burned. And it's interesting. I'm grateful to Matt. And we put the call out all the time. When a government policy or when public sentiment or when something is having a great impact on your business, in particular, a detrimental impact, we'd love to hear about it so we can help this audience understand it better. And so we can better understand the impact of these policies, right? Like it's easy for us to cheer for like, take Jack Daniels off the shelves, get rid of the California cabs, like this sort of a thing. And then you start thinking about the impact that it has on local businesses. And we go, okay, well, let's at least have an informed conversation or an informed understanding of how this is actually playing out and impacting Canadians.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Ben says that Alberta is the liquor mecca across all of Canada. He says so many of my Ontario whiskey friends order from several Alberta stores, which is pretty cool. That's kind of a neat way to look at it. Wise Kyle says private is the best way for sure. He says government should be involved less, not more, in all industries. To a certain degree, I agree. I also think that government regulation is important. I don't think that Kyle's talking about dialing back regulation. Tracy says, I'm shocked that the government did this without consulting with the right people for how to properly deal with this situation. Signs off with her sarcasm font for sure. Ken K says he thinks that the current model in Alberta is better. Don says in BC, nobody could stand seeing any products from the States on the shelves. So David Eby pulled it. The premier pulled it.
Good conversation, yeah. Yttrium says, the opposite almost. AGLC should own and operate all liquor stores.
Yeah, they said that. I don't agree. I don't know. There's certain things where I
grew up in Ontario and it was just always like that. You went to the beer store and got beer. You went to the LCBO and got liquor. You just knew the province controlled everything.
Doesn't it close at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, things close a lot earlier. That's one thing. Like, I was amazed when I moved to Alberta and there were random liquor stores at all these small mini malls open till 2 a.m. I was like, this is like Vegas, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Ken says, I'm all for the privatization of liquor stores in Alberta, but the problem, he says, is that there's no control on oligopolies and monopolies that are dominating the market. For me, it's interesting. I've seen some criticisms, and in particular, I don't want to discount this when you're talking a lot about community safety, when you're talking about zoning. Probably the last time that this was a really prominent conversation was when the Trudeau government was legalizing cannabis, and people were starting to talk about where the shops could go, and they couldn't be within a certain distance of, for example, schools or what have you. And
now,
but I mean,
I saw one next to a daycare, and not next to, but in the same vicinity.
Well, and it's probably and you'll hear these stories. It's fascinating to talk to entrepreneurs in that space. A lot of times, there's got to be a minimum distance between whether it's a daycare or a school. Yeah. I don't know the legislation too well, so I won't take us down that path. But there's got to be minimum distances, and a lot of these groups have had to buy you're talking of a difference of a meter or a couple of feet. And they've had to introduce strange sort of things with zoning so they can squeeze in this new location within the minimum distance. But around that time, and part of the bigger conversation, you'll see a lot of people that are visiting our home province from elsewhere in Canada or from anywhere else in the world. And one of the observations they'll make is that there are liquor stores absolutely everywhere. They're like, why do Albertans need so many liquor stores? What is up with a liquor store in every corner? What's up with liquor stores across the street from each other? What's up with all the liquor stores? My answer, quite frankly, has been it's dictated by the market.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not like the government of Ontario, the government of BC saying we're going to put a store here, like it or not, whether or not the public is well served in this case. I know some people have no appetite for the public being well served on booze. I get it. People come at this from 100 different directions. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, and you're using your money or someone else's money and you're sticking your neck out there, you're not going to open a store somewhere you don't think it can succeed.
No.
And if it's not succeeding, you're not going to keep it open.
Yeah.
And I like to see the market ruling in that decision.
Yeah. And I live on the south side. There's, every little community has, a couple liquor stores. And we can argue back and forth on whether there should be so many liquor stores. I understand it's not a great thing to have tons of liquor stores everywhere, but it's I think of safety, right? If you can walk a block or two to grab some booze later in the evening, I mean, most people, that's better than having a few drinks and getting in your car and driving downtown or wherever, farther than you have to on a wintry cold night. I think that's a bit of safety. And the bottom line is people are going to drink regardless, no matter if there's lots of liquor stores or minimal liquor stores. They're going to make the trip there anyways, however they have to. So if you can walk 2 blocks from your house on a cold night after you've had a few, I'd rather people do that than get in their car, right? So there's a ton of things we can discuss about this, but also I like how you brought up those little South Side, I won't say the names, but whatever, those are small businesses for people, right?
Yeah,
so,
a lot of them are.
Yeah.
There's the big guys, everybody knows who they are, all the big brands.
But you're supporting a guy who has
mom
a family
and pop shop,
or a woman who has a family at home, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this one's for free to our friends at Vine Arts,
there you go.
We've partnered with them before on 124th Street, and they've got a couple of beautiful locations down in Calgary. We go there and we shop there. Sherbrooke Liquor is another good example for those of you in the Metro Edmonton region, because these are the owner of the store. the person that's like making payments every month on that store and that's grinding it out, they're also oftentimes the ones that are behind the counter, and they're the ones that are like bringing in the really neat products, the really unique wines, the tequilas you can't get anywhere else, and offering something a little bit different because of the competitive atmosphere within there. And I just think, like I said, there's worse problems in the world than not being able to buy beer after 9 p.m. But I just remember when I was in Ontario, I had a really hard time wrapping my mind around. In BC, there's stores that will sell beer, but no cold beer, for example. And you're just like, what is going on, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I say, let the market rule. I appreciate the privatization on this side. Now, I'm not going to say that I believe that privatization serves the public in every context, in every industry. I think that we're going to have a big conversation. We've had them already. We'll have them again on this show. Auto insurance keeps coming up. I know a lot of people are looking at SGI in Saskatchewan, or they've looked at ICBC in British Columbia and said, like, gosh, Alberta, in particular, like, 16-year-old boys, as an example, there's a lot of different demos, but a lot of people or a lot of families are paying auto insurance rates that are absolutely out of control. And my anecdotal understanding is that publicly owned, and I think it's kind of funny, you look at, people look at SGI in Saskatchewan, they go, we need that. That's what we want. It's like, that's basically a Crown Corp, right? Like that's not the way that Albertans are wired.
No.
But I think sometimes, government administered offerings like that, like an insurance, serve the public better. So maybe you got to do it from an industry to industry standpoint.
And I can see where you stand on this thing with the government, run liquor stores. But I personally think you would enjoy the beer store in Ontario. It's just called the beer store because, like you just said, you go up to a counter, you can't see anything. There's basically a menu. You order it, and there's like a trolley, like rack system, and it comes out of the back ice cold, and you pick it up and leave. I don't know. I just feel like Ryan Jesperson would enjoy that experience.
I think of all I can think of.
Like you wait in a line, it's very calm. You know what I mean? It's not like people walking around and do you have this? Do you have that? They're always stocked, and it just comes out the back ice cold. You pick it up, go.
Huh.
Yeah.
When I think of Ontario and beer, I just think of Doug Ford. Buck of beer. Buck of beer.
Yeah, buck of beer.
What's your policy on the economy? Buck of beer.
Buck of beer.
What's your plan for developing downtown Toronto? Buck of beer.
Name.
Stop the gravy train. Buck of beer. Kathy says their insurance is up for renewal right now. Says she's back to working from home for the foreseeable future, so it's changed how many kilometers that she's been driving per year. Says it's saved her $250 a year. That's kind of interesting.
It sucks right now. Like on 2 vehicles for our home went up about $70 in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And then also the auto insurer I'm using is like after October, we're no longer in Alberta. They're literally in like almost every other province except BC.
Really?
And they were never in BC because it's ICBC, but they're pulling out of Alberta now because it's just the market. They're not making enough money, right?
Yeah. Bunny Slipper says, seriously, how many liquor stores do we need? Like, especially with liquor sales decreasing, according to numbers from the AGLC. You and I, Bunny Slippers, and our Real Talkers can debate this, like, how many liquor stores do we need? I guess all I'm saying is I would rather have the market make that determination as opposed to the government, right? I don't like the government deciding what we need and what we don't. I would prefer that we decide what we need and what we don't. And if the market's diluted and there's too many stores, some of them are going to fail. And if it's not, and the market is well served or underserved, then it creates opportunity. And I just always believe in letting the market rule. We've seen it in cannabis. Like, how many cannabis retail locations have you seen close? Like, a lot.
In the beginning, they were all trying to be like, which I think we all thought it was, my partner especially, was excited for like the boutique experience and people with knowledge. But then it was like, you can't say anything. You can't give recommendations on what can make, CBD that can help your knee feel better, blah, blah, blah. You can just say how things taste and whatever. And then you saw all those ones that were trying to be different go away. And now I won't say the name, but you see all the the bargain stores now that are basically like, lowest prices ever, highest THC
taking
content.
it all over.
That's not what we wanted, I don't think.
I agree with you. And there's very few, relatively speaking, ma and pa shops in cannabis retail. as compared to when was it? 2017, right? It was legalized 2017, 2018, something like that.
I thought it would be like BC, and BC. This was when I was there when it wasn't. It's still not legal, but cafes everywhere. But you walk in, somebody refers you or like recommends something. You grab a tea, you sit down, you sample it, and then you leave with it. Like it's really it's a very, I'll call it a cold experience. Like it's very impersonal, and I give a shout out to the people working in these places, because when I do go in, occasionally I don't lots, but I go for my partner. They're trying the best they can, but they know they're kind of handcuffed, and I understand why they are. You can't act like you're a doctor or whatever, but also just the experience. I don't think it's not what anyone expected or wanted, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that you were talking about wine or Vine Arts or whatever. That experience is incredible, and they have so much knowledge, and they'll take you right over to it. And there's tastings, and it's night and day for cannabis.
Why?
Right?
Because they want to create that elevated experience,
right? Yeah.
Right? And we're not even getting paid for saying this, by the way. So it's sincere. Terrellyn's wondering if anyone has seen the drive-through liquor store in Kimberley, BC. I've not been there. I've not been to Kimberley. I love Kimberley. They get some of the best snow in Canada. How about Jasper's Dump, by the way? Jasper's got more than 50 centimeters this week for anybody that's going to be riding the mountains.
Absolutely.
Get your ass out to Jasper, because it's unbelievable. But I did. You guys know I went to university in Langley, BC, just outside Vancouver. And I remember in Fort Langley, I think was it Fort Langley or Langley proper? Anyway, they had a drive-through liquor store. And I always just thought that was kind of a strange optic. I understand that they're not endorsing, they're not handing it to you with the can open, but I was like, a drive-through liquor store. It just seems like, I don't know, it's got a bit of a weird vibe to it.
Oh, Krista with the throwback Amsterdam Cafe. That was a cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Actually near
Vancouver.
Hastings,
near
in
Number
BC.
5 Orange.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't even know if it still exists anymore.
I'm sure
but
it
back
does.
in 2007,
there was a fire though. I think they had a bad fire.
Krista, that is exactly what I was just talking about.
There was like a row of them, if I remember. I was going to university mid-1990s. I know some of you weren't even born yet. Save me the comments. One of you yesterday making me feel very old in the comments. But you're right. They were sort of like the cops left them alone.
Oh yeah,
and you could go in there,
yeah.
And I remember it being a very interesting experience, because you'd go in and you'd have to speak frankly, like you'd have preppies and skids, and you'd have like the business crowd, and you'd have the party crowd, and you'd have like all these different. It was amazing. It was like a cacophony of people, and all just hanging out. Like some of you'd be in there, they'd have like a smoking room where you could go in and like smoke joints and have a coffee, and they'd sell brownies, and it was just it was kind of a really unique. I could never wrap my mind around it, especially coming from as a high school student coming from Alberta into Vancouver and being like, what is like, and you'd walk in there and you're just waiting at any moment for the door to get kicked in by the RCMP or Vancouver police and for it to be raided.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it existed. I was like, wow, this is coming from Ontario as well, where stuff was so unlocked. I was like, I can just walk in here and purchase and sit down and smoke here and then leave.
The kids will never know what we had to fight for to get to where we're at.
We paved the way.
And it still reminds me as well, and here I'm just showing a highlight here from our conversation early January of 2024. That would have been, I think, January 11th was the date of the interview. You can find it in our podcast archive or on our YouTube channel. But our conversation with Dana Larson, remember that? Dana had his, so he sells psychedelics, and it is illegal. Like people call it the gray market. I mean, it is what it is. It's not legal. But Dana is probably Canada's foremost advocate for psychedelics, for shrooms. I'm talking about shrooms, everybody. Dana was the one that sort of made a name for himself when he mailed shrooms to every MLA in BC for Christmas. Do you remember that? He mailed shrooms, like, to put it sort of, to sound a little bit more official, he mailed illegal drugs to every MLA in BC to kind of send a message. And I remember joking with him, just being like, how many of them do you think actually ate the shrooms? And, whatever. But that's still happening these days. Like Dana's shop was raided by Vancouver police just last year. And obviously everything was confiscated. And he did the interview with us like the morning after. It was pretty wild stuff.
It was an incredible interview. Go back and watch it, Real Talkers. And I could think of a few. Actually, I could think of a lot of MLAs who could benefit from a perspective check with a little mushroom trip.
Yeah.
Maybe you know, relate a little bit more to their community and have a little more empathy if they rode the wild train that is magic mushrooms.
Yeah, Krista's watching on Facebook. She says, Johnny, Amsterdam Cafe still a cool place. She
It's
says
still there.
She says there's an
Wow.
upstairs now, and you can smoke right in the open. That from Krista.
Yeah,
so
I
there you
haven't
have
been
it.
there the last few times I've been to Vancouver. So
And Terrelyn says, "Oh my gosh, Jespo, the good old days. You just said preps." Yeah, I also just said skids, and as soon as I said that, I thought, "Are you still allowed to call bangers skids?" I don't know. It's a compliment. It's not an insult. Well, it's not a compliment, but it's not an insult. If
you
you're
mean like people calling people skids?
like bangers,
Yeah,
heavy
like-
metal rockers. Like everybody knows who the preps, the jocks, and the skids
when
are.
I was in high school, everyone had like a name that
We had,
for their
like-
group of people
Yeah.
that was not like, you know, racist or homophobic. It was just,
No.
skids
Yeah.
and preps and skaters and
Skaters,
jocks. It was
jocks.
just how it was, right?
Yeah,
But
I think the preps and the jocks were kind of like the same crowd.
yeah.
For the most part.
Well, some of them did
Well,
play
minus
sports,
those that
but,
had
yeah.
like the sweaters over their shoulders with the boat shoes. That's
But
not
preppies were like kind of cool, but they were like the intellectuals. Like, okay, we know this guy's
Braided
going-
leather belts.
This guy's, you know, valedictorian.
Sperry topsiders. Dad's a dentist.
Yeah.
And then the skids are
Abercrombie and Finch.
Yeah, exactly.
American Eagle wearing.
Yeah, skids and skaters always had each other's backs.
Oh yeah. They
You
went
know?
to the same concerts and, you know, hung out.
We're
and-
gonna definitely get a letter of complaint.
I know we are.
For sure. You can send it to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Maybe a good fit for the flamethrower, which is coming up in our next episode. That'll be presented, of course, as always, by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. As we wrap, wanted to let you know a couple of things. I'm excited to be appearing on a panel today. It's Political Action Day, so those of you that will be joining us, presented by the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, I'll see you in a couple of hours. Really looking forward to it. Tomorrow, in partnership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, a Real Talk Roundtable, a special edition. We're rallying the troops. Everybody working in the agriculture industry is feeling the pain right now from these tariffs. We're going to hear from 4 strong voices. And a quick heads up, registration now open for the Real Talk Golf Classic on the 19th of June. Find the details at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Duvedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.